Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video with me. Today, we've got Pablo from Dreaming Spanish, the creator. So I'm very grateful that we have him on today, and I'm keen to hear what he's got to say.
Hi
Um,
guys, thanks for having me, Luke.
no worries, no worries. Thank you for coming on. First of all, maybe you just want to introduce yourself to everyone, Pablo. Some people might not know who you are. I think most will. But yeah, if you
hmm
want to give a quick description of what you do and who you are, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm Pablo Roman. I'm the creator of the YouTube channel Dreaming Spanish, YouTube channel and learning platform. And yeah, when I started this 7 years ago, there was basically almost no content available to learn language using comprehensible input. So I decided that somebody needs to make it, and I started it, and it's going pretty well. And since then, many people have started imitating us, creating more content in Spanish and in many other languages. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I think the creation of Dreaming Spanish it's gone really well. It's helped so many people, I think, including myself, as I've mentioned on my channel. Um, and yeah, I think everyone's really grateful for it. It's been such a good program that everyone's been able to use.
I hope so. I hope many people, and I mean, and I see it. I've seen over time quite a few people who say, I've graduated dreaming Spanish, and I've gone on to like live in a Spanish-speaking country, or just continue learning on my own, right? And yeah, it's really nice to see that.
Yeah, well, for myself, I think Dreaming Spanish was the first language learning platform which genuinely gave me a pathway to I can actually do this compared to the more, I guess, old school style of learning. How does
hmm
Dreaming Spanish sort of compare to that old school style with a textbook? Um,
Well, we try to completely avoid learning language consciously, like try to like learning through traditional methods like studying the grammar, doing exercises and corrections, practicing writing, speaking and stuff. We completely avoid all that, and we try to get you to learn using acquisition, using the same principles, the same mental systems that are used when people learn their first language.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's definitely something a little bit different to what I thought language learning was before I started, and I think what most people have thought. But I think you can see other YouTubers like myself that have had success with the program, so it clearly works, and the input method, it clearly works. I also wanted to just touch on your own language learning journey, I guess.
hmm
It's something that obviously a lot of people know about Dreaming Spanish, but they might not know about your own journey with languages. So, do you mind touching on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I guess the first foreign language that I actually learned to a good level was English, and after learning traditionally in school, when it got time to travel to go live in another country, I didn't know about comprehensible input, but I just started watching TV shows, movies, cartoons in English because it was just the fun and easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But then I went to live in another country. I went to study in Finland, and I realized that I knew more English than I thought, and I could put sentences together, which I didn't know why I was putting them together like that, but they worked, and I realized I was using grammar that I had never learned in school. So I realized that you could at least improve at a language without really having to study it.
Mm.
And then a few years later, I got a scholarship to go do a PhD program in Japan. And I found this website called All Japanese All the Time, which basically, uh, he at that time, at least he didn't name it comprehensible input, but it's mainly based on input, on listening a lot, reading a lot. And that really matched my experience with learning English. It's just that the guy Katsumoto, he recommended doing it right from the very beginning. So for me, it was a very little step going from, okay, you can get better at the language by just getting input, to you can start learning a language and learn mostly through input, right?
Mm.
So I learned Japanese. I was living in Japan for 4 years, but really after having learned Japanese with input 6 months before going to the country and then living there for 6 months, I was pretty comfortable with daily conversation. So I started
Yep.
living in a house with 5 other Japanese people, with only Japanese people. And over the time that I was living there, I got pretty good at it, and I realized that nobody knows about this. Nobody knows that there's an easier, better way to learn a language, and that you can reach a level that's higher than what most people think. So I started researching ways of learning, like better ways of learning languages. I started researching schools, and I found about this school AUA in Bangkok, which taught with input, with only input, no exercises, no exams, no taking notes, no dictionaries. And I had to test it myself, so I went there and I studied. I experienced.
It's always like
I enjoyed
study.
the show that the
Yeah.
teachers were putting together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to test the method on myself, so I went there and yeah, I attended that school for 1 year, and I took 1,000 hours of input, and I got to a pretty good level. It takes more time to learn Thai than to learn Spanish. So I was not at a level yet in which I could understand like TV or movies. I could have simple conversations, but I wouldn't say I was fluent. But then I was able to keep up with Thai myself. And yeah, I also got to a pretty good level. Now my wife is Thai. She speaks to me only in Thai. I live in Thailand, and I get by for basically everything, just speaking Thai. And now I'm learning Chinese, and also with comprehensible input. But luckily, over the last years, there have been quite a few comprehensible input channels appearing on YouTube. So it's another language that's starting to get some content, not a lot yet. So it's something that we will also like to address in the future. But for now, there are some channels that have started making CI content.
Yeah, sure. Wow. Okay. That's quite the story, quite the journey, I guess you could say. So would you say that your comprehensible input journey sort of started with the all Japanese all the time model, I guess you could say? Is that how it all sort of clicked, that this is the method?
I do believe it was an inflection point. I do believe that if that day I hadn't found, or during that part of my life I hadn't found that blog, my life probably would be completely different right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I know the name of it is all Japanese all the time. Did you take that as seriously as it sounds, as it was?
Yeah.
Like whenever you can, you would be listening to Japanese, no Spanish, no
Yeah.
Catalan. It was
Yeah. I took it literally, and for the 6 months before I went to Japan, I hid all my books that were not that were not in Japanese. I bought a bunch of Japanese books. I rented Japanese DVDs, because at that time was the only way that I found to have Japanese subtitles on movies and
Okay.
stuff.
What year was this? Sorry, just
what's
to add a
that?
bit of What year was
This was 2010.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so yeah, all day since I woke up, I would be with Japanese in my ears. I would only stop that to read books in Japanese or manga, or to study kanji. For the kanji, I studied, and I did Anki, and I used Remembering the Kanji by James Isaac, which is like magic. And if you're learning Japanese or Chinese, you have to use it. But yeah, I was just doing that all day. During those 6 months, I was not working. I was just waiting to go to Japan. So I was not working. I was not studying. So I could commit to that full time. So
Okay,
basically,
wow.
all like 16 waking hours every day, I would be doing that. I tried listening to it while I was sleeping, which was one of the things that Katsumoto recommended in one of his blog posts. I stopped very soon because it would just wake me up while I was sleeping, and didn't seem like a very good thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's super interesting. Like I find that so your motivation levels must have been so high to be able to do that 16 hours a day for pretty much 6 months.
Yeah, like before I found that blog, I thought, okay, I'll go to Japan, and by the time I leave, I'll have a kind of okay level. But I saw this guy, and he was like, yeah, I learned Japanese to fluency in a year and a half, to the level that I went to Japan. I took a job interview for like a normal job interview in Japanese, and I got hired. And I was like, well, if this guy can do it, so can I. And I just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very impressive. 16 hours a day for 6 months. That's something I'll definitely struggle with. But I just wanted to ask, like, during this process, because something I found while I've been using comprehensible input to learn Spanish is that I do get a bit drained after
Mhm.
watch. Not so much now, but especially when I was starting out, after 1 or 2 hours of watching Spanish, um, I would just feel completely drained. How did you manage to do 16 hours a day without feeling like your head was going to explode? Like, I find that really interesting because on those days where I watched 2, 3 hours of Spanish, I would just be
Mhm.
like, I just want to watch some English after that, or just do something completely different.
So at that moment, I didn't really know why. I didn't know that like other people had this issue. But when I went to learn Thai, I realized that some people got this issue and some people didn't. And I was attending school for 6 hours a day, which is not 16, but still many people felt really tired after 2 or 3 hours.
Mm.
And I think the difference was that I was not trying to understand. I was just sitting down and paying attention and trying to enjoy the show. I wasn't
Mm.
trying to memorize words in my head. I wasn't trying to translate. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just there sitting down enjoying the show.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really important bit of advice because I still have, although I can understand pretty good Spanish now, I'd say. Like I don't watch any of the Dreaming Spanish videos really anymore. I might watch the odd one, but I've sort of moved on to native content now.
Mhm.
Um, but even that, even though I can understand it, I still have those days where I get a bit frustrated mentally. And after an hour, that sort of takes a toll because I can't understand a couple of phrases in a TV show or something like that. And I find it really brings me down mentally. So I think that's a really good point to just let it be and let it happen.
Yeah, and I think when I was learning Japanese, that just happened more naturally because there was no comprehensible input content. So I was
Mm-hmm.
exposed basically to only native content. And it's just so hard that you can give up right away on trying to like understand most of it.
Mm.
So maybe that just worked in my favor. But of course, it took probably more hours of input to get to a decent level because I had no idea of what comprehensible input is. So I was mostly exposed to just native content. And a lot of the time it was just podcasts. And I didn't really understand what was going on. It was just, I would get maybe some words that I heard quite a few times. I would learn
Sure.
the pronunciation of those words, but learning the meaning would only come a lot later. Um, so yeah, I think this just by coincidence it happened that way.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. I love that. You must have had a lot of trust in the people that came up with all Japanese all the time, because I know, like, when I first saw your method of dreaming Spanish, and I had no abilities, I'd never learnt another language, I didn't really
Mm.
know what I was looking into. I'll be honest, it sounded like a little bit of a scam at first. I was like, this guy can't
Okay,
be, it can't be true. I can't just watch these videos and not touch a textbook and not doing any grammar and just pick it up.
luckily
But
we don't ask for like $500 right away.
yeah, exactly, exactly. That was the one thing keeping me in it. But I remember saying to myself, look, I'm going to give it, like you seem like a nice guy, you seem trustworthy. I'm going to trust this guy. I'm going to give it 150 hours. And if
Okay.
that didn't work, I would ditch it and not do it. But obviously, I got to 150 hours and said, this is amazing. I would have never thought I got that far. How did you go in trusting like the people behind all Japanese all the time? Was there a moment where you sort of knew, hang on, this is legitimate, this works, or did it take a lot of time for you to go, no, this method is working?
It just really matched my experience with learning English. What I told you about going to Finland and just being able to come up with sentences and use words in ways that we had never learned in school. So it
Mm-hmm.
matched that experience. So I didn't feel like I had to like put my trust on this guy or anything. It just sounded true to me. And of course, I think this is a lot easier for people who have already learned a second language, right?
Mm.
The one thing that I kind of I would say trusted him with, but it's not even that because I just wanted to try and see if it worked. Was using remembering the kanji to learn kanji, and that's something that it sounded too good to be true. But then I did it, and I did it for how long did I do it? I did it for like a week, and I learned like 200 kanji, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing, this is like magic. And so
Hmm.
it was very easy to convince me about that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So you still did no grammar with Japanese.
With
Do you,
Japanese, I so there's two, or let's say three parts to all Japanese all the time. One is the kanji, another one is the input, and another one is what they call sentence mining, which is you find sentences in the media you're consuming, you put them
Mhm.
on Anki, and you have them there to review, to kind of refresh that vocabulary, those like sentence patterns and stuff. I tried that at the beginning. I tried for a while. It just didn't work whatsoever. Like I would learn the cards, the flashcards. I would learn to answer them, and then I would go out on the wild. And when I saw the grammar there, it just didn't click. It just didn't
Mhm.
connect with whatever I had learned on in Anki. So I just gave up and I stopped doing flashcards and started doing only input.
Yeah, nice. I often get, because as I'm sure you might have seen, I when I post my videos online, I still get comments saying you need to do you well, they're not that aggressive, but they say you should do this grammar and this and that in terms of grammar to improve it. And I'm aware my grammar when I speak Spanish isn't perfect at the moment.
Mhm.
Do you have any do you think there's any room for grammar, or is it something that should just you think 100% should be forgotten about?
So I think grammar most of the time should be avoided, and for sure, for a long time when you begin should be avoided because there are quite a few things that if you start thinking consciously about them, you're just gonna connect them to the wrong concepts in your native language. And I've seen that a lot. I mean, I see that a lot with English with native Spanish speakers, but I saw that a lot, especially when learning Japanese and then later when learning Thai, which is people would have trouble with words that it never occurred to me to connect to each other. To that, like there are many people have problems with the particles wa and ga, and that's something that I wasn't even aware of,
Hmm.
so I didn't pay attention to. So they just sound natural. I know when to use each one because they just feel different, or when to not use either because that's another
Hmm.
trouble that people have. And the same with Thai. Like years after learning Thai, I saw somewhere that Thai has three verbs for to be, and I was like, no, this is not true. They're just
Yeah.
these are completely different things. Why are you mixing them together as
Yeah.
one? It's not. Yeah.
Well, I think that's sort of like because, like, obviously in my suggested YouTube videos now, I get recommended videos for different languages explaining just language learning content. And I
Mhm.
sometimes watch some that are in English explaining the grammar of English. And
Okay.
I don't, like, as a native English speaker, I don't know what they're kind of talking about. Like, I'm not necessarily a super academic person that knows the structure of why words go where they go. I just kind of know it when I speak. And I guess that's sort of the same thing when learning a second language is that's kind of what you're saying.
Try reading about the rules of the article, the like when to use it, when not to use it. It's
It
crazy.
just
Like you
yeah.
cannot learn it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. Um yeah, so from your advice, don't worry about grammar at all. Pretty much.
Yeah. So useful thing. I guess grammar can be useful if, let's say, you've learned, you reach a certain level, and for whatever reason, you have trouble because you started learning a certain way in school, using translation, whatever, and now there's some mistake that you always make when speaking or when writing. When speaking is hard, like I don't know if there's really any way to improve that when speaking. For me, for English, I know or I knew that I was making some mistakes, and I would correct myself every time I made them, and I would still continue making them.
Mhm.
So I don't know that it's useful in that situation, but for writing, yeah, it can help if there's some mistake that you always make, and like you know the rule for fixing that, and you care about writing well because you're writing something, I don't know, for school or to publish or something, then yeah, it can be useful in that situation because you have the time to look at it and think about it.
Yeah, sure. So something that you'd hold off till later,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah. And I also wanted to touch on sort of similar to the grammar topic is the speaking topic. When to start practicing speaking in
Hmm.
the language. Um, person, I yeah, when well, I still am. Whilst I'm learning Spanish, I started speaking. I'd say not at what's the recommend 1,000 hours? Do you recommend on Dreaming Spanish to
We
wait to
basically
speak?
recommend to just let it come out whenever it comes out.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, around 1,000 hours, we think for most people there, it's a good point. It's not like strict or it's not like a hard border or anything. It's
Mm.
just that the more you wait, the more likely is that you will have acquired the vocabulary, the usage of vocabulary, the grammar that you need to communicate. If you do it earlier, then you have more chances of not knowing certain elements, and then when you try to communicate that meaning, then you're gonna have to um, recur to using your native language, and you may end up mixing some of the grammar or the usage of vocabulary of your native language. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, it doesn't mean that if you do it when you're at 990 hours, like it's gonna be a disaster or anything. It's just
Yeah.
the more you wait, the better. If you uh, wait a little, then better than not waiting at all. If you wait a lot, then it's even better. But I would say 900 hours, 800 hours, it's still
Yep.
fine. Like it's still you're still gonna get most of the benefits.
Yeah, for sure. I
Mm.
can't remember the exact point I started doing lessons online where I'd speak in Spanish.
Mhm.
Um, but I remember when I first started, because I hadn't heard about this method at all and I wanted to learn Spanish, I just went on italki and booked a tutor and just started a lesson where it would mostly be in English, but he would teach me a few words. And then I found Dreaming Spanish and then I came back to it probably maybe 8 months, a year later, and I couldn't really believe that I could sort of. It was nowhere near perfect at all, but the full lesson was all in Spanish. There was a little bit of English being used, but I could get by and I could get my point across with basic conversations. And I remember I was just like, wow, like this actually works.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, you get that feeling for some reason when um, like I've felt this myself, and many people have mentioned this, that you're having a conversation and a word comes out of your mouth that you haven't even you weren't aware that you learned, but it just came out and it sounds right, and the other person understands you, and you're like, wow, where did that come from?
Yeah, it's a nice little dopamine rush when you first start speaking and they can understand you, and then obviously after all you get used to it a bit. Um, I wanted to, in terms of speaking, actually, while I've got you on here, I wanted to get your advice. So I am at the point now where I can do these lessons and I can speak. You know, I could speak for hours if I want in Spanish with a tutor. And as I said, it's not perfect. However, I do find the speaking bit quite draining for myself compared to the input bit, if that
Okay.
makes sense. So I'm happy to listen to Spanish for a lot of hours, but I find if I do an hour of speaking to someone, maybe it's because it's online, it's not as interactive, but I was actually thinking of just putting the speaking aside for the moment and then just doing a lot more input. And then maybe before I go overseas again to a Spanish speaking country, I would just sit down and do like a whole week full time of bulk italki lessons with a tutor one on one. What would your thoughts be around that? I just wanted to get your idea of if you would agree that's a good idea or disagree that's a horrible idea.
Yeah, I think look, it sounds good. If you're not in a rush to speak it, then you don't need to rush it. You can wait for when you need the language. Some people just like to use it and want to have a conversation and stuff. But yeah, in this situation in which you want to go to Mexico and use it there, then yeah, you don't need to rush it. My experience, I guess my the time when I had the biggest step of going from just getting input for a long time to starting to speak it was with English when I went to live in Finland. And yeah, it was just right on from the first day, meet other exchange students, meet the teachers, and just having to use English all day long. And yeah, my head hurt for like the first week, but
Yeah.
then I was all right.
Yeah.
But I can imagine if I had to use English every day and my level had been lower and I had to try to put sentences together and spend more mental effort trying to come up with words because I had a hard time coming up with them, then yeah, I could get tired more easily, maybe.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it's such a good, obviously with the internet now and technology, it's so good that you can learn the language so much before living somewhere, before
Mm.
traveling somewhere, because it can give you, even if it's not perfect, like I would like to think in my case, my Spanish isn't perfect now, but if I went to live overseas, if I was there for 2 months, I think I would be almost fluent if I just kept using it every day because of my base is pretty solid.
Yeah, I think you'll probably be fine.
Yeah, yeah. That's good to hear. I just wanted to touch on the business side of things as well. Look, that was really interesting, your story and how you got where you are and how you created Dreaming Spanish. But how's the business aspect been? Obviously, you've got a number of employees there now, sort of all over the globe. How's
Mhm.
how's that been creating a business of your own?
Yeah, it's complicated. Ever since the beginning, I just had to learn many different things because even before, even when I was just by myself, I had to learn to record videos, to edit videos, to I don't know, make the thumbnails, titles, etc., like all that stuff. And then later, like starting to find people to help me, to pay them, to I don't know. There's just so much stuff that you have, and you have to learn things one by one. And then
Mm-hmm.
later on, once you start hiring people, then you can um, delegate those tasks, but you
Yeah,
have
for
to
sure.
had learn to do them first. And that never stops because once you learn to do something well, you delegate, and then you go and do the next thing, the next step, whatever it is, whether that's creating the website, whether that's trying a new like marketing strategy, if that's like something that you need to do for your project. Yeah, there's just so much stuff, and never um, you never get to learn to do everything, and it's just so. One of the things that I find the hardest is that you don't know what to do next. Nobody's telling you, okay, the next step is this. You need to
Yeah.
do this. No, there's like an infinite number of things that you could do. Should we start doing TikTok videos? I don't know. Maybe should we start like a mail newsletter? Maybe I don't know what's gonna work best.
Mm-hmm.
We should try many things, but also we don't have the bandwidth to try everything. So yeah, you never know if what you're doing is the best thing that you could be doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's very impressive what you've created,
Mhm.
and I think the team's great that you've built around as well. Well, obviously we only see the people on screen. I'm sure there's a number of people behind the screens as well doing work. But was there a moment where you knew this was going to work as a business, or did you have a bit of doubt? Just the only reason I ask this is because those first videos could have been the first year. They are quite, I think a lot of them were probably just recorded on an iPhone or something similar. It was quite a humble start to the business. And then obviously it's gotten to where it is now, where it's almost like there's a production team on some videos. They look so good. So, was there any moments of doubt there, or did you always believe in yourself that this was going to be useful to people learning Spanish?
I mean, I wasn't sure that it would grow to like be a business and be able to like grow a team. I wanted to. It's an idea that I had right from the beginning because right from the beginning, I knew that you needed like 1,000 hours of um, content that's catered for learners to get to a decent level. But what I did know is that I was gonna continue doing that for as long as I didn't realize that it was not gonna work, like it was impossible to do. And yeah, and for a long time it was growing very slowly, but I never had like a deadline, like this needs to be working by this time, or like I'll run out of money or something. At the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, I was working part time as a web developer and just using the other 4 hours every day to make videos. And then at some point in 28 late 2018, I started working on it full time, and yeah, it started working. Early 2019, I managed to have enough to make enough money out of it to just do this, not have to do anything else. And from there on, it kept growing, not as fast as I would have liked. But yeah, it's going pretty well. And for the last 2 years, it's starting to look like yeah, this is gonna work. We'll probably soon gonna have enough bandwidth and resources to start a second language. I cannot promise it's gonna be this year, but we want to do it as soon as we can. And yeah, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, no, it's as I said, it's very impressive. And the next question I was going to ask you is, what plans does Dreaming Spanish have for the future? But as you already mentioned, you're already looking into starting another language.
Yeah. Soon.
Is that a secret? What it is, I presume.
Soon-ish. It's not a secret because it's not like completely decided yet.
Okay.
So it's not even like we're keeping it
Sure,
secret.
okay.
But yeah, we want to do it soon, and we have many plans. We have improvements to the website that some of them people have been asking for a long time. And yeah, I don't know, and content, of course, like just keep doing, making interesting content and trying new ideas and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Very nice. Did you ever think it was going to get this big when you started off? Or I know you said you had a good belief that it was a good idea, but did you ever think it would be this big with this many people sort of following the journey?
I wasn't sure that we would ever get, let's say, to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And once we reach 100,000, I thought, okay, this is gonna be around it. Like, it's gonna kind of stay around this level. We're never gonna reach like 1 million or something, right? I still kind of feel that way, but now we're above 200K, and I'm thinking, okay, who knows? This starts feeling like it's a possibility in the future. I'm not sure, but we'll see. But yeah. I wasn't sure that we would gonna get this level of success for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And just before we wrap everything up here, what's your one bit of advice you would give to new language learners?
Oof. It's just, there's so much. I mean, one thing that I mentioned often, usually this is more like, is a more specific question, like in this case or in that case.
Yeah.
The more like general thing that I can say, piece of advice, is to do the easy thing. Like, don't try to make things harder than they are. There's usually like an easy thing to do right now, an easy path that you can take, and not because something is hard to do or more challenging or more draining is gonna help you make faster progress.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good bit of advice. It's language learning. It's sort of different to other things in life. Sometimes it's easier to just, well, what you should be doing is taking the easier option instead of focusing so much effort into studying a language, for example. Yeah, I think that's why when I started, it felt like a bit of a scam, because I just thought I'm going to have to dedicate my whole life to this and drive myself crazy. But it's been one of the most enjoyable parts of my life over the last couple of years, starting off with Dreaming Spanish and yeah, just learning Spanish as a whole. So yeah, before we leave it here, I just wanted to thank you very much for what you've created, and yeah, you've really made a big impact on my life.
That's great. That's great to hear. Yeah, we're really grateful just for hearing those stories.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Pablo. We appreciate the chat.
Yeah, again, thanks for having me, and I'll see you next time.
All good.